Greetings everyone, this is TimeRider. What you're looking at is the Matchbox number 17C Austin Metropolitan Taxi, which was modeled after the Austin FX3. It's supposed to be kind of a dark reddish brown with the typical mustard colored driver who's missing. The interior was always a shade of gray, and the wheels are either gray or silver, with silver being the more valuable. According to Falkensteiner, they were only manufactured for 3 years, 1960, 1961, and 1962. I'm going to restore this one, so stick around. Let me get my shout-outs out right away. This casting was sent to me from the UK by the Wilson family. You can see that it was red, that kind of brownish red at one point. The base is bent. It's in pretty rough shape. You can't see real clearly how bad the roof is, but the roof is pretty bad. And as I've started doing now, I'm going to drill out the center of this rolled over post right off the bat. Austin sold these from 1948 to 1958. The real car, which is kind of odd, makes the casting kind of odd because Lesney cast it the first time in 1960 and they were already producing an FX4. That back piece is one of those little clips and I hate them. I would rather have a tab, but the older ones, they did it a little more. And you can see here that that back piece is bent. It's going to require some straightening. That's what color it was supposed to be, or used to be, or however you want to phrase it. I remember seeing these in the movies and such, though, but geez, anything fairly modern is, they're using FX4s or something newer. But I'm going to clean this post up as I always do, because I want it to go back together easily. Let's see if I can straighten that a little bit, just bending it with my thumb. That didn't really work, so I thought I'd try grabbing it with a needle nose. Let's see if I could straighten it out that way at all, but no cigar. Austin just made the chassis. The bodies were made by an outfit called Car Bodies of Coventry. Sometimes when you take these things off, you can get them to the point where they'll just screw off, which really helps you when you're putting it back together. Because you don't have to hammer quite so much because there's already a bit of a lip there. And in case you haven't figured it out, yeah, I hate hammering on something that I've painted. So, one of the reasons why when I remodel, I'll probably buy some kind of drill press just so I can do this. But I got lucky with this one and they screwed off as well. I hate taking hammers to these things because they will break, but this wasn't, I didn't have to bend it much. And it's actually pretty straight right there. The one ear on the one side was not lined up with the other ear. So I'm just going to use my needle nose here and make it straight. And here you can see once I got it done, there we go. Now maybe those back wheels won't sag so much. It's a neat little toy. And so I sourced this driver from Steve Flowers in the UK. I think I'm going to name him Jimmy. Yeah. Jimmy. And there he is. A little silver Jimmy. And now it's time to drop these pieces into the primordial ooze, from which all die-cast life springs. We'll give her a shake for luck. You can see here that the casting itself is pretty weathered. It has a lot of discoloration. Fortunately, there wasn't a great deal of corrosion. I still have the ability to get it cleaned up enough to have it look good when it's painted, so I'm happy with that. It's actually a neat little toy. In real life, these things could turn around in 25 feet. Now, I missed my center here, but I wanted to show you what the roof looked like, because it was pretty hacked up. And I'm not making excuses, it is. I'm going to paint this thing with Duplicolor white primer. I must have painted something purple there, huh? Most of these were manual transmissions. They started making automatic transmission variants right at the very end. But very few exist. Boy, I sure missed my center there too, didn't I? Ah, well, you get the idea. Looks ready for paint to me. Now, I still had to tap this out, so I put on a pair of gloves and with my 2-56, 1/16 inch drill bit and my Anderson oiler, sponsored by TG Wraps in Rogers, Minnesota. This is the 2-56 tap. I know the guys over in Europe use like a 2mm. They must have a more standardized thread configuration because that's what the 256 stands for. So here, let me show you how I figure stuff out sometimes. This color that I need to make it's got a touch of brown to it, but it's like a maroon. And I don't know what you put in maroon. But this one looks pretty good. Oh, there you go. I guess that's what you need to make maroon. So let's make some maroon with blue, red, yellow, and white. Now, the funny thing is, and I've commented on this before, how rosy Tamiya paint lays on when it's wet. And somebody put an explanation in the comments once before. I don't remember what it was. But as you lay it on, here I'm getting into my wet coats, you can see that the brown is starting to come out. It's actually kind of an interesting color. I assume that it was painted black because most of them on the street were black. Oh, let's get to Jimmy. Jimmy needs to be mustard yellow. Jimmy, Jimmy, Jimmy. So I painted all the trim and Jimmy, and then I'm going to lay a coat of X35, and I found a little woolly booger, as Paul would call it, hanging off of the rear fender well. So I need to get rid of that. I got my X-Acto knife because it had been painted on, and actually I was kind of afraid to do this, and so I just gave up. I figured I'd get it off when the paint dried. But that's how the paint wound up. I think it's actually a pretty good representation. But I'm going to put some X35 clear over the silver that I painted. got a real pre-war design to it. I know here in the States by the 1950s, we had gotten into more of incorporated fenders and things like that. Nice little cab, though. It went through a bunch of ownership changes, and eventually they ceased using the badge in 1987, and they became a part of the Rover Group. And that's not Land Rover kind of Rover. It's just looks like they're just like family sedans. Paint Jimmy's seat. I might have been a little light on the gray, but I've looked around at them online, and they used all kinds of different shades of gray on the inside of these. So anyway, let me get back to where I started with this thing. You can see that the paint was, pretty hacked up, and the brown was gone, and the black was gone, and its ass was dragging because of the little broken frame, and, Pat the cabbie took off, leaving this cab for Jimmy. So let's take a look at Jimmy's cab. Let me tell you, these had like little diesels in them, so there was no blubs for Jimmy here. It was putt-putts. Here it is, the Matchbox number 17C, Austin Metropolitan Taxi. Stick around for an edition of The Bench. This is TimeRider, and I'll leave the light on for you. Hey everybody, thanks for hanging around for this episode of The Bench. Just want to remind everybody that the Three Blind Mice Flash Cider Invitational is November 16th, so if you want to play with the Three Blind Mice, be sure to get an edition of that casting. You can find them all over eBay. And then on the 16th, like the people who are scrolling across the screen, bring your flash. I wanted to let everybody know, too, that I've got some auctions going on eBay right now. I'll put a link in the description below. Some old A castings and a group of cars that you can restore. And all of the proceeds are going to Marines Toys for Tots Foundation. So if you want to make a donation and get yourself a wee little car, swing by eBay and make a bid. And last but certainly not least, I started work on this little 19A MG sports car because I got another Jimmy, and Jimmy needs a sports car. He needs something to do with all that cab money he's collecting. So I'm going to fix up this sports car because I don't want Jimmy to live an unfulfilled life. This is TimeRider. Everybody have a great week. Thumb up, thumb down, don't matter to me. If you're going to leave a comment, please be respectful. And that's it. See you next time.